I knew something was wrong the moment I pulled onto Cedar Ridge Drive and saw the massive RV trailer blocking my entire driveway like some kind of metallic barricade. It was one of those enormous things, the kind that looked like it could sleep 12 people and had probably cost more than my first car. The problem was not just that it was in my way, but that it was positioned so perfectly across my driveway entrance that I could not even squeeze my Honda Civic past it if I tried. My name is Andrew Carter, and I had lived in the Sunset Grove Homeowners Association community in suburban Phoenix, Arizona, for exactly 3 years. 3 years of perfectly mowed lawns, beige approved house colors, and enough passive-aggressive notices stuffed in my mailbox to fill a filing cabinet. But this was something else entirely. I sat in my car for a moment, engine idling, staring at the obstruction with genuine disbelief. It was 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday evening in March, and all I wanted was to pull into my garage, heat up some leftover pizza, and watch the basketball game. Instead, I was trapped on the street, blocked by what appeared to be a 30-foot travel trailer that definitely did not belong to me. The trailer had one of those custom decal families on the back window, the kind with stick figures representing each family member, including 3 dogs and a cat. Very cute, very not in my driveway appropriate. I put my car in park right there in the middle of the street and got out, walking around the trailer to figure out whose mobile vacation home had decided to camp out in front of my house. That was when I saw her. Linda Morrison, the Sunset Grove HOA president, standing in her own driveway 3 houses down, arms crossed, watching me with the kind of satisfied expression that made my blood pressure spike instantly. Linda was 52 years old, had that particular haircut that somehow all HOA board members seemed to acquire, the short blonde bob with the severe angle, and wore a pink tracksuit that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. She was the kind of person who measured your grass height with an actual ruler and filed complaints if your garbage cans were visible from the street for more than 2 hours after pickup. I walked toward her, trying to keep my tone civil. "Linda, is this your trailer?" "It certainly is," she said, not even bothering to pretend she did not know exactly what the problem was. "I just had it delivered today." "Beautiful, is it not? It's blocking my driveway," I said, stating the obvious. "Oh, I know," she replied, examining her manicured nails. "But you see, Andrew, according to HOA Regulations Section 4.7, recreational vehicles can be parked in the community for up to 72 hours for loading and unloading purposes. I am well within my rights." I blinked at her, processing this logic. "But you are not parked in front of your house." "You are parked in front of mine, blocking my driveway. That's illegal, Linda, city ordinance." She waved her hand dismissively. "There was not enough room in front of my house with Greg's truck there. Besides, this is only temporary. I will move it when I am ready." "When you're ready." I could feel my jaw clenching. "I need to get into my driveway right now. I live here. You can't just block someone's driveway because it's convenient for you." Linda's expression shifted into that particular kind of smile that Karens everywhere had perfected. The one that said they knew exactly how much they were irritating you and were enjoying every second of it. "Well, Andrew, if you had been a more cooperative member of this community, perhaps I would be more inclined to help you out. But given your history of violations, including that time your garbage can was out until Thursday afternoon, and when you painted your mailbox post without prior approval, I think you can wait a few hours." I stared at her, genuinely stunned. The garbage can incident had been because I was sick with the flu. The mailbox post was the exact same color it had always been, I had just touched up some chipped paint. But Linda kept a record of everything, real or imagined, and apparently, she was now using her vendetta list to justify blocking my driveway with a vehicle the size of a small house. "Move the trailer, Linda," I said, forcing my voice to stay level. "This is not about HOA rules. This is about basic courtesy and actual law. You cannot block someone's driveway." "I will move it tomorrow," she said, turning back toward her house. "I am going inside now to have dinner. You have a pleasant evening, Andrew." She walked away, and I stood there on the sidewalk, watching her disappear into her pristine house with its perfectly symmetrical landscaping and its little garden gnomes arranged by height. The audacity of it was almost impressive. Almost. I walked back to my car, which was still idling in the middle of the street, and pulled it into a visitor parking spot about 50 yards away. My garage was stuffed with tools, my mountain bike, and boxes of stuff I kept meaning to organize, which meant I usually parked in the driveway anyway. But that was not the point. The point was that Linda had deliberately blocked my property access out of pure spite, and she thought she could get away with it because she had a little plastic badge that said HOA President. I went inside through my front door, which I rarely used, and immediately started researching. Phoenix City ordinances were very clear. Blocking a driveway was illegal. It did not matter if you were there for 5 minutes or 5 hours. You could not obstruct someone's legal access to their property. The HOA rules Linda kept citing had absolutely no bearing on actual city law. I called the non-emergency police line and explained the situation. The dispatcher was sympathetic, but told me what I already suspected. They could send someone out to ticket the vehicle, but it would take a few hours given current call volume, and even then, Linda would just get a citation. The trailer would not be towed immediately unless it was there for an extended period or caused a safety hazard. "Can I have it towed myself?" I asked. "Not from a public street in front of your house," the dispatcher explained. "The trailer is not on your property, it's just blocking access to it. You would need to go through the city, and that's a process that takes time." I thanked her and hung up, staring out my window at the massive trailer that now dominated my view. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the street, and I could see a few neighbors peeking out their windows, no doubt enjoying the drama. Sunset Grove was the kind of place where a blocked driveway was the most exciting thing to happen in months. That was when the idea hit me. Linda wanted to play games with technicalities and regulations. Fine. I could play that game too. I went out to my garage and started digging through my collection of tools and equipment. I had a pretty decent workshop setup, courtesy of my dad who had passed down his love of fixing things. Among the various wrenches, saws, and power tools, I found exactly what I needed: a heavy-duty chain and a padlock. The chain was about 20 feet long, thick steel links that I had used once to help a friend pull a stump out of their yard. It was rated for something like 5,000 pounds of tensile strength. I also grabbed my work gloves and a headlamp. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. The street was quiet as I walked back outside, the chain coiled over my shoulder. A few houses down, I could see the glow of television screens through windows. Normal people having normal evenings. Meanwhile, I was about to commit what was either a brilliant act of civil disobedience or a completely insane property dispute escalation. Probably both. Linda's trailer was hitched and had a standard coupler, but it was not connected to any vehicle. It was just sitting there on its own wheels, held in place by its parking brake and the slight incline of the street. What it did have, however, was a very sturdy frame tongue at the front, the metal triangle that connected to a truck's hitch, And right next to where the trailer was parked, in the little strip of grass between the sidewalk and the street, was a large ash tree. It was one of the neighborhood trees, technically city property, with a trunk about 2 feet in diameter. Perfect. I wrapped the chain around the tree trunk first, looping it twice to make sure it was secure, then fed it through itself to create a tight cinch. Then I took the other end of the chain and wrapped it around the trailer's frame, weaving it through the metal framework and pulling it tight. Finally, I used the padlock to secure the chain to itself, clicking it shut with a satisfying snap. I stepped back and examined my work. The trailer was now firmly chained to the city tree. Even if Linda managed to back a truck up to it and connect the hitch, she would not be able to move it more than a few inches before the chain went taut. She would have to either cut the chain or somehow remove the tree, neither of which were options she could exercise easily or legally. I was admiring my handiwork when I heard a door slam. Linda came walking down the sidewalk, still in her pink tracksuit, her face already red with anger before she even reached me. "What do you think you are doing?" she demanded, her voice hitting that particular pitch that could probably shatter wine glasses. "Securing a vehicle that was left unsecured on a public street," I said calmly, pulling off my work gloves. "Safety hazard, you know. This trailer could roll, cause an accident. I am just being a good neighbor. You chained my trailer to a tree." She was standing right in front of me now, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something floral and overpowering. "I did," I agreed. "And it is going to stay that way until you move it out of my driveway access. See, Linda, you can park it here for 72 hours according to HOA rules, sure. But I can also take reasonable measures to secure abandoned property that is blocking my access. Funny how rules work when you actually think about them." Her mouth opened and closed a few times, and I could practically see her brain trying to process this turn of events. "This is destruction of property. This is vandalism. I am calling the police." "You should absolutely do that," I said, pulling out my phone. "In fact, while you are at it, I will call them too. We can explain to them how you blocked my driveway illegally, and I can show them how I secured an unsecured vehicle. I am sure they will find it all very interesting." Linda's face went from red to purple. She pulled out her own phone and stabbed at it with her finger, turning away from me as she made her call. I could hear her talking rapidly, her voice getting higher and more agitated. I went ahead and called the non-emergency line again, getting a different dispatcher this time. I explained that there was now a dispute over a vehicle blocking my driveway, that I had secured the vehicle with a chain to prevent it from rolling, and that the vehicle's owner was currently calling the police as well. The dispatcher sighed, the kind of deep, weary sigh that spoke of too many neighborhood disputes and not enough coffee, and said they would send a unit when one became available. By this point, several neighbors had emerged from their houses, drawn by the commotion. I recognized most of them. Tom and Patricia Henderson from across the street, both retired and always ready for some drama. Marcus Webb from 2 houses down, a software engineer who worked from home and was always complaining about HOA fees. And Jenny Foster, a single mom with 2 kids who kept to herself mostly, but occasionally joined me in eye-rolling at HOA meetings. "What is going on out here?" Tom called out, walking over with his hands in his pockets. "Linda parked her trailer blocking my driveway," I explained. "So I chained it to the tree until she moves it." Tom looked at the chain, looked at the trailer, looked at Linda, who was still on the phone pacing in circles, and then started laughing. "Oh man, Andrew, you actually did it." "Did what?" I asked. "What we all wish we could do to Linda," Marcus said, joining us with a grin. "How many times has she filed complaints about my kid's basketball hoop? How many times has she measured everyone's grass? This is beautiful, man. Linda ended her call and marched back over. The police are on their way, she announced triumphantly. And they are going to arrest you for vandalism and property damage and probably a dozen other things. Looking forward to it, I said. We all stood there in the growing darkness, waiting. The streetlights flickered on, casting yellow pools of light across the scene. More neighbors came out, and soon there was a small crowd gathered, maybe 10 or 12 people, all watching the chain trailer like it was some kind of art installation. Patricia brought out cookies. Actual homemade cookies, chocolate chip on a paper plate. I just made these, she said, offering them around. Figured if we are going to stand out here waiting for the police, we might as well snack. It turned into an impromptu block party, minus the music and celebration and plus a heavy dose of schadenfreude. People were taking photos of the chain trailer. Someone made a joke about it being a new kind of modern sculpture. Linda stood off to the side, arms crossed, glaring at everyone but especially at me. The police arrived about 40 minutes later, a single patrol car with 2 officers, one older and heavyset, the other younger and looking like she would rather be anywhere else. They got out slowly, surveying the scene with the practiced weariness of people who had seen everything. So, the older officer said, whose name tag read Officer Bryant. Who wants to explain what is happening here? Linda jumped in immediately. Officer, this man, she pointed at me dramatically, chained my trailer to a tree without my permission. That is vandalism and destruction of property and probably theft or something. I want him arrested immediately. Officer Bryant looked at me. Sir, did you chain this trailer to the tree? I did, I confirmed. The trailer has been blocking my driveway for several hours. I called the non-emergency line earlier to report it. Miss Morrison here refused to move it, claiming HOA rules gave her the right to park it here. I secured the vehicle to prevent it from rolling and causing a safety hazard. The younger officer, whose name tag read Officer Santos, was walking around the trailer examining the chain setup. Did you damage the trailer in any way? She asked me. No, madam, I said. The chain is wrapped around the frame, which is designed to handle heavy loads. No scratches, no damage. Just secured. Officer Bryant turned to Linda. Madam, is this trailer currently registered and insured? Of course it is, Linda huffed. I just bought it. And why is it parked here instead of in front of your house or in your driveway? Linda's confidence faltered slightly. There was not enough room at my house, but I am allowed to park it on the street for up to 72 hours according to our HOA rules. HOA rules do not override city ordinances, Officer Bryant said, pulling out a small notepad. You cannot block someone's driveway, madam. That is Phoenix City Code Section 28872. It is illegal regardless of what your homeowners association says. But I was going to move it tomorrow, Linda protested, her voice taking on a whining quality. That does not matter, Officer Santos chimed in. You are blocking this gentleman's access to his property right now. That is the violation. I could see the realization dawning on Linda's face, the moment when she understood that her interpretation of rules did not actually protect her from real laws. It was like watching someone realize they had been playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers, except she was the only one who had not known. So what happens now? I asked. Officer Bryant looked at his partner, then at me, then at the chain trailer. Well, technically, sir, you cannot just chain someone else's property to a tree. That could be considered unlawful restraint of property or something in that vein. However, he held up a hand as Linda started to look triumphant. Given that the property was illegally blocking your driveway and you did not damage it, and you were taking what could be argued as reasonable measures to prevent it from moving further and causing additional obstruction. I am inclined to just call this a civil matter." "A civil matter?" Linda's voice went up an octave. "He chained my trailer to a tree." "You blocked his driveway, madam," Officer Santos said. "Here is what is going to happen. You are getting a citation for blocking the driveway. That is a $250 fine, and you need to move this trailer immediately." "How am I supposed to move it when it is chained to a tree?" Linda demanded. Everyone looked at me. I shrugged. "I will remove the chain once the trailer is connected to a vehicle and ready to be moved to a legal parking location, one that is not in front of my driveway." Officer Bryant nodded. "That seems reasonable. Madam, do you have a vehicle that can tow this trailer?" Linda looked like she wanted to argue more, but she could see she was not going to win this one. "My husband has a truck. He is out of town until tomorrow." "Then you can move it tomorrow," Officer Bryant said. "But in the meantime, it cannot stay here. Do you have anyone else who can move it tonight?" Linda's face went through several expressions, settling on defeated anger. "I will call someone." "You have 1 hour," Officer Santos said. "If the trailer is not moved in 1 hour, we will have it towed at your expense, chain and all." That got Linda moving. She pulled out her phone again and walked away, making calls with increasing desperation. I heard her trying to reach various people, her voice getting more strained with each attempt. Officer Bryant turned to me while Linda was occupied. "Son, I appreciate the creativity, but next time maybe just call us first and let us handle it, all right?" "I did call," I pointed out. "I was told it would take several hours and she would probably just get a ticket," he sighed. "Yeah, well, that is true, but chaining things to trees is not exactly standard procedure." "Noted," I said. The officers stayed, their patrol car parked with lights off, creating an official presence that made the whole scene feel even more surreal. The neighbors were still hanging around, some sitting on their lawns now, enjoying the show. Patricia had gone back inside and returned with lemonade. It really had turned into a block party. About 30 minutes later, a flatbed tow truck rumbled down the street, its amber lights flashing. A guy in his 30s hopped out, took one look at the setup, and started laughing. "You have got to be kidding me. Linda Morrison, this is your emergency." Apparently, Linda had called a towing company she had used before, and apparently the driver knew her well enough to be on a first-name basis and not in a good way. "Just load the trailer, Derek," Linda snapped. "I am paying you, am I not?" Derek walked over to examine the chain. "You want me to cut it or what?" "No," Officer Santos interjected. "The chain needs to be removed first." "Sir," she looked at me. "Are you willing to remove the chain now?" "Absolutely," I said. I walked over with my keys, found the one for the padlock, and unlocked it. The chain rattled as I unwound it from the frame and then from the tree, coiling it back up and hefting it over my shoulder. "All yours, Derek." Derek was efficient. I had to give him that. He had the trailer winched up onto his flatbed in about 15 minutes, securing it with straps and chains of his own. Linda stood watching, her arms crossed so tightly she looked like she might crack her own ribs. "Where am I taking this?" Derek asked her. "My driveway," Linda said through gritted teeth. "Your driveway. Lady, you said there was not enough room." "My husband can move his truck when he gets home," Linda said. "Just put it there." Derek shrugged and climbed back into his truck. The whole convoy, tow truck, trailer, and police escort, rolled down to Linda's house 3 doors down. We all followed, because of course we did. It was the most entertainment Sunset Grove had seen since the great garbage can color debate of last summer. Linda's driveway was indeed occupied by a large pickup truck, a Ford F-250 that looked like it had never seen dirt in its life. Derek assessed the situation, and managed to angle the trailer partially into the driveway and partially on the front lawn, blocking the sidewalk slightly but at least off the street. Officer Santos wrote out the citation and handed it to Linda, who snatched it without a word. "Madam, this trailer cannot block the sidewalk. You have until tomorrow afternoon to get it properly stored or moved." Linda did not respond, just turned and stormed into her house, slamming the door hard enough that I worried about her hinges. The police officers left. Derek collected his payment via a very tense credit card transaction conducted in Linda's driveway, and eventually the crowd dispersed. People drifted back to their houses, no doubt already composing texts and social media posts about the drama. I walked back to my now accessible driveway, moved my car from the visitor parking spot, and pulled into my garage like I had wanted to do 3 hours earlier. It was almost 10 p.m. The basketball game was long over, but I felt a strange sense of satisfaction that was worth missing it. I went inside, heated up my leftover pizza, and cracked open a beer. My phone started buzzing with texts from neighbors, some congratulating me, others warning me that Linda would probably retaliate. Marcus sent me a gif of someone chaining a car to a pole with the caption, "Hero behavior." I was halfway through my pizza when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost did not answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello, Mr. Carter, this is Linda Morrison." Her voice was cold, controlled, the anger barely contained beneath a veneer of professionalism. "I want you to know that I am filing a formal complaint with the HOA board about your behavior tonight. What you did was unacceptable and will not be tolerated in this community." "Linda, you blocked my driveway illegally and got a citation from the police," I pointed out. "I am pretty sure the HOA board is going to be more interested in that than in me securing an unsecured vehicle." "We will see about that," she said. "I have been president of this HOA for 6 years, and I know exactly how things work. You just made a very big mistake." She hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone for a moment, then shrugged and went back to my pizza. If Linda wanted to make this into a bigger fight, that was her choice. But I had a feeling that for once, the neighborhood was on my side. The next few days were quiet, deceptively so. Linda's trailer disappeared from her driveway, presumably taken to a storage facility where it belonged. I went to work, came home, lived my life. But I could feel something brewing, the kind of tension that comes before a storm. The storm broke exactly 1 week later when I found an official HOA notice in my mailbox. It was a thick envelope, the kind that means trouble. Inside were 3 separate violation notices, each printed on official HOA letterhead with Linda's signature at the bottom. Violation 1. Unauthorized modification of common area landscaping, specifically wrapping a chain around a community tree, which could have damaged the bark and harmed the tree's health. Fine, $500. Violation 2. Creating a public disturbance and bringing negative attention to the community by involving law enforcement in a personal dispute that should have been resolved through proper HOA channels. Fine, $500. Violation 3. Aggressive and threatening behavior toward an HOA board member, creating a hostile environment within the community. Fine, $1,000. Total fines, $2,000, due within 30 days or subject to additional penalties and potential legal action up to and including foreclosure on my property. I read through the notices twice, feeling my blood pressure rise with each ridiculous accusation. The chain had not damaged the tree. I had been careful about that. The public disturbance had been caused by Linda blocking my driveway, not by me calling the police about an illegal obstruction. And I had not been aggressive or threatening. I had been firm but civil the entire time. This was retaliation, pure and simple. Linda was abusing her position as HOA president to punish me for standing up to her. I took photos of all the notices and sent them to Marcus, who I knew had dealt with his own issues with Linda before. He called me within 5 minutes. $2,000. Is she insane? Marcus sounded genuinely angry. Andrew, you cannot just pay this. She is going to keep doing this to you and everyone else if nobody stands up to her. I know, I said, but what are my options? She is the HOA president. She controls the board. Does she, though? Marcus said. There are 5 board members total. Linda is president, sure, but there is also Greg Patterson, vice president, who I think is getting tired of her nonsense. Sarah Kim is treasurer, and she is reasonable. The other 2 are Carol Barnes and Michael Torres, and they mostly just go along with whatever, but they are not hardcore Linda supporters. So what are you suggesting? I am suggesting we call an emergency meeting of the community and challenge these fines, Marcus said. The HOA bylaws allow for any homeowner to request a hearing to dispute fines. You have that right. And I bet if we get enough people to show up and support you, the rest of the board might actually listen. It was a long shot, but it was better than just rolling over and accepting Linda's vendetta. All right, I said. Let us do it. Marcus helped me draft a formal request for a hearing, citing the relevant sections of the HOA bylaws. We submitted it that same day, and according to the rules, the board had to schedule a hearing within 2 weeks. Linda tried to delay, claiming scheduling conflicts, but Marcus and I kept pushing, and eventually, a date was set. Thursday evening, 3 weeks after the original driveway incident in the community clubhouse. Word spread fast. Marcus put together a group text with about 20 neighbors who were either fed up with Linda's management style or just interested in supporting me. Jenny Foster, the single mom, revealed that Linda had fined her $300 last year for having a crack in her driveway that was barely visible. Tom and Patricia Henderson had been fined for having the wrong shade of white on their fence. The stories kept coming, a whole catalog of petty fines and arbitrary enforcement. This is bigger than just your driveway situation, Jenny told me a few days before the hearing. Linda has been running this HOA like her personal fiefdom for years. Most people just pay the fines because it is easier than fighting. But if we all stand together, maybe we can actually change things. I spent the days leading up to the hearing preparing my case. I printed out photos showing the tree with no damage from the chain. I got a copy of the police report from the driveway incident, which clearly stated that Linda had received a citation for illegally blocking my driveway. I compiled a timeline of events, demonstrating that I had acted reasonably and in response to Linda's illegal action. I even found the city ordinance about driveway obstruction and printed it out in large font. The night of the hearing, I arrived at the clubhouse 30 minutes early and found that at least 40 people were already there. The community room was set up with rows of folding chairs facing a long table where the board members would sit. Usually, HOA meetings drew maybe 10 people, mostly retirees with nothing better to do. Tonight, the room was packed. Linda arrived exactly at the scheduled start time, 7 p.m., followed by the other board members. She looked stunned at the turnout, her confident expression faltering for a moment before she plastered on a tight smile. She took her seat at the center of the board table, with Greg Patterson to her right and Sarah Kim to her left. "Good evening, everyone," Linda began, her voice overly formal. "We are here tonight to conduct a hearing regarding violations issued to Andrew Carter of 847 Cedar Ridge Drive. This is a closed board meeting, so I am going to have to ask those who are not directly involved to leave." "Actually," Marcus stood up from the front row, holding a copy of the HOA bylaws. Section 12.4 clearly states that all homeowner hearings must be open to community members unless a vote is held to make it a closed session. And that vote requires a majority of the board. So unless you want to call for that vote right now, Linda, everyone here has a right to stay. Linda's jaw clenched. She looked at the other board members, clearly calculating whether she could win that vote. Greg was studying the ceiling with great interest. Sarah was flipping through her own copy of the bylaws. Carol and Michael looked uncomfortable. "Fine," Linda said. "The hearing will remain open. Mr. Carter, you have 15 minutes to present your case." I stood up and walked to the front of the room, setting my folder of evidence on a small podium that had been set up. 40 pairs of eyes watched me, and I realized this was the most public speaking I had done since college presentations. But I was not nervous. I was angry, and that gave me focus. "Thank you," I began. 3 weeks ago, on March 14th, I came home from work to find a large RV trailer blocking my driveway. This trailer belonged to Linda Morrison, the HOA president. When I asked her to move it, she refused, claiming that HOA rules allowed her to park it on the street for 72 hours. What she did not mention was that blocking someone's driveway is illegal under Phoenix City Code 28872, regardless of HOA rules. I pulled out the first photo and held it up. I called the police non-emergency line, who confirmed the trailer was illegally parked. However, they said it would take several hours to respond. In the meantime, I could not access my own driveway, my own property. So I took what I believed was a reasonable step. I secured the trailer with a chain to prevent it from rolling or causing further obstruction. I showed the photo of the chain trailer. A few people in the audience chuckled. The police did eventually arrive. They cited Miss Morrison for illegally blocking my driveway. She received a $250 fine from the city. The trailer was then moved by a towing company. At no point did I damage the trailer or the tree. At no point was I aggressive or threatening. I simply stood up for my legal right to access my own property. I pulled out the next document. This is the police report from that night. It clearly states that Miss Morrison was at fault. It also notes that no damage was done to any property. Now, 1 week later, I received these. I held up the violation notices. $2,000 in fines from the HOA. For what? For defending my property rights, for calling the police when someone broke the law. This is not about rules or community standards. This is retaliation. I looked directly at Linda, who was sitting ramrod straight, her face carefully neutral. Miss Morrison is abusing her position as HOA president to punish a homeowner who challenged her. And if the board allows this to stand, it sets a precedent that any homeowner who disagrees with the HOA leadership can be fined into submission. That is not how a homeowners association is supposed to work. I gathered my papers and sat down. The room was silent for a moment, then Marcus started clapping. It spread through the audience until most of the room was applauding. Linda's face was turning red again. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," Linda said stiffly. "The board will now discuss the violations and make a determination." Actually, Greg Patterson spoke up, and everyone turned to look at him. Greg was in his mid-60s, retired from a career in real estate, and generally known as a reasonable guy who had been tired of Linda's dramatics for a while now. "I think we need to hear from Miss Morrison first." "Linda, why was your trailer parked in front of Mr. Carter's house instead of your own?" Linda looked surprised at the question coming from her own vice president. "I already explained this. There was not enough room at my house." "So you blocked a neighbor's driveway," Greg said. "And when he objected, you refused to move it. and then you fined him $2,000 for responding to your illegal action. Does that sum it up? That is not how it happened, Linda protested. Andrew was rude and confrontational. He damaged community property by wrapping a chain around the tree. Did he damage the tree? Sarah Kim asked. I went and looked at it yesterday. I could not see any damage. Linda fumbled for words. Well, he could have damaged it. And even if he did not, the act of using community property for his personal dispute was inappropriate. The community property that you forced him to use because you blocked his driveway, Greg said. He looked at the other board members. I am going to be honest here. I have been on this board for 4 years, and I am tired of watching us issue fines for trivial nonsense while real problems get ignored. Our community pool has needed resurfacing for 2 years. We have street lights that have been out for months. But instead, we are spending time on this petty dispute that started because our president parked illegally. Carol Barnes, a quiet woman in her 70s who rarely spoke at meetings, raised her hand. I agree with Greg. These fines are excessive and seem retaliatory. I move that we dismiss all 3 violations against Mr. Carter. I second that motion, Sarah said immediately. Linda looked panicked. We have not even had a proper discussion. We cannot just dismiss these. We are having a discussion right now, Greg said. All in favor of dismissing the violations against Andrew Carter. 3 hands went up: Greg, Sarah, and Carol. Michael Torres hesitated, looking between Linda and the others, then slowly raised his hand as well. 4 out of 5. The motion passes, Greg said. The violations are dismissed. Mr. Carter, you owe nothing to the HOA for this incident. The room erupted in applause again. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had not realized how tense I had been until that moment. Linda stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. This is outrageous. I am the president of this board, and I will not tolerate this kind of insubordination. Linda, Greg said calmly, we are not being insubordinate. We are exercising our responsibilities as board members to make fair decisions. That is how this is supposed to work. I quit, Linda announced. If this is how I am going to be treated after 6 years of service to this community, I quit, effective immediately. She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the clubhouse, leaving stunned silence in her wake. The remaining board members looked at each other. Well, Sarah said eventually, I guess we need to elect a new president. Greg was elected president unanimously that same night. The meeting continued for another hour, with various community members raising issues and concerns that had been ignored under Linda's leadership. The broken street lights, the pool resurfacing, the outdated playground equipment. For the first time in years, the HOA actually felt like a community organization instead of Linda's personal enforcement agency. I walked home that night feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The neighborhood was quiet, the spring air cool and pleasant. As I passed Linda's house, I saw her silhouette in the window, watching. I did not wave or acknowledge her. I just kept walking. Over the next few weeks, things settled into a new normal. Greg proved to be an efficient and fair president, setting up committees to address the various maintenance issues and actually listening to homeowner concerns. The community felt different, more relaxed. People actually talked to each other at the mailboxes instead of scurrying back to their houses. Linda became a ghost in the neighborhood. She stopped coming to her door when people knocked. Her husband, Greg, who turned out to be a pretty decent guy when he was not under Linda's shadow, apologized to me one day when we happened to both be getting our mail at the same time. I am sorry about all that drama with the trailer, he said. Linda gets an idea in her head about how things should be and she just cannot let it go, but she took it too far this time. She knows it. No hard feelings, I told him, which was mostly true. I was angry at what Linda had done, but I did not want to carry that around forever. But the story was not quite over yet. About 2 months after the hearing, I was sitting in my living room on a Saturday morning, drinking coffee and scrolling through my phone, when I heard a commotion outside. I looked out the window and saw 2 police cars parked in front of Linda's house, along with an unmarked sedan that had the look of a detective's vehicle. I went outside, as did most of the neighborhood. We gathered in small clusters, watching as police officers went in and out of Linda's house, carrying boxes of documents. Linda stood on her front lawn, arguing with a woman in a business suit who was clearly not interested in hearing it. Marcus came over to stand next to me. "What do you think is happening?" "No idea," I said, "but it looks serious." We found out later that afternoon when news spread through the neighborhood group text. Apparently, the new HOA board under Greg's leadership had decided to conduct an audit of the HOA's finances. What they found was shocking. Linda had been embezzling money from the HOA for at least 3 years, maybe longer. Small amounts at first, a few $100s here and there, but increasing over time to the point where she had stolen nearly $75,000 from community funds. She had been issuing fake vendor invoices for maintenance work that was never done, paying herself consulting fees for services she never provided, and pocketing portions of the special assessment fees that homeowners paid. She had covered her tracks well, but not well enough to survive a proper forensic audit conducted by professionals. The woman in the business suit was a detective from the Phoenix Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. Linda was arrested that same day and charged with multiple counts of theft, fraud, and embezzlement. The neighborhood was stunned. Everyone knew Linda was controlling and petty, but actual theft was something else entirely. As more details emerged, it became clear that this was why Linda had been so aggressive about enforcing rules and issuing fines. She needed to project an image of absolute authority and control to keep anyone from questioning her management of the HOA finances. My driveway dispute had been the beginning of the end for her. By pushing back against her petty abuse of power, I had inadvertently started a chain reaction that led to people actually examining what Linda had been doing. If she had just moved her trailer that night, if she had not tried to retaliate with those ridiculous fines, she might have gotten away with the embezzlement for years longer. The case moved through the legal system over the following months. Linda pleaded not guilty at first, claiming the money had been used for legitimate HOA expenses that were just poorly documented. But the evidence was overwhelming. The forensic accountants had traced the money to her personal accounts, showing payments for her RV trailer, luxury vacations, designer clothes, and other personal expenses. Eventually, her lawyer convinced her to take a plea deal. Linda pleaded guilty to felony theft and fraud charges. In September, she was sentenced to 3 years in state prison and ordered to pay full restitution of $75,000 to the HOA, plus additional fines and fees. Her husband, Greg, who had apparently known nothing about the embezzlement, filed for divorce within a week of her arrest. The neighborhood watched their house go up for sale in October. Greg moved out first, finding an apartment closer to his work. The house sold within a month to a young couple with a baby who seemed delightfully unaware of the drama that had preceded them. As for me, life returned to normal. I parked in my driveway every evening without incident. I paid my HOA fees, which were actually reduced once the financial mismanagement was cleaned up. I went to the occasional HOA meeting, which were now boring and productive instead of tense and dramatic. The chain that had started everything stayed in my garage, coiled in the corner with my other tools. Every time I saw it, I remembered that night, standing in the street wrapping steel links around a tree while my neighbor called the police on herself without realizing it. It had been an absurd situation, but it had led to real justice in the end. Marcus and I became better friends through the whole ordeal. We met up occasionally for beers and basketball games, often joking about the great trailer incident. Jenny Foster thanked me multiple times for standing up to Linda, saying it had made the whole community better. Even Tom and Patricia Henderson, who usually kept to themselves, waved and chatted whenever they saw me. The new HOA board under Greg's leadership actually fixed things. The pool got resurfaced. The street lights were repaired. The playground got new equipment that kids actually wanted to use. Community meetings became about improving the neighborhood instead of enforcing arbitrary rules. We still had standards and regulations, but they were applied fairly and reasonably. I thought about Linda sometimes, sitting in a prison cell somewhere, probably still convinced she had been in the right somehow. The mental gymnastics required to block someone's driveway, refuse to move, retaliate with massive fines, and then act shocked when consequences followed were truly Olympic level. But in the end, her own actions had unraveled her entire scheme. The following spring, almost exactly a year after the trailer incident, I was working in my garage on a Saturday when a moving truck pulled up to Linda's old house. The new neighbors, Derek and Emma Rivera, were carrying in boxes. I walked over to introduce myself and welcome them to the neighborhood. "Thanks," Emma said, smiling. "Everyone has been so friendly. Our realtor mentioned there had been some drama with the previous owner, but she did not go into details." "Ancient history," I told her. "You are going to love it here. Great neighborhood, good people," and it was true. Sunset Grove had become what an HOA community was supposed to be. A place where neighbors looked out for each other, where rules existed to help rather than control, and where someone blocking your driveway was just an honest mistake that got sorted out with a quick conversation, not a declaration of war. I still had the photos on my phone, the ones of the trailer chained to the tree with half the neighborhood standing around watching. Sometimes I scrolled through them late at night, remembering how it had felt to stand up to petty tyranny with nothing but a heavy chain and the conviction that I was right. It had been scary in the moment, not knowing if I would face legal trouble or endless retaliation. But I had learned something important. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to accept unreasonable behavior, even from people who claim authority over you. The tree was still there, the ash tree on the public grass strip, its trunk showing no signs of damage from the chain. I walked past it almost every day, a silent monument to one absurd night when a neighborhood dispute became something bigger. Kids played around it, dogs peed on it, and it just kept growing, indifferent to the human drama that had briefly swirled around its roots. In the end, Linda had blocked my driveway thinking she was flexing her power as HOA president, teaching an uppity homeowner a lesson about who was in charge. Instead, she had exposed her own crimes and destroyed her own life. All because she could not just be a reasonable person and move her trailer. All because she thought petty authority made her untouchable. I learned to be more involved in the HOA after that. I attended meetings regularly, volunteered for a couple of committees, and generally tried to be the kind of community member that made the neighborhood better. Not because I suddenly loved HOAs or thought they were perfect systems, but because I understood now that they were what we made them. With the right people in charge, they could actually serve their intended purpose. The trailer itself, the massive RV that had started everything, was seized as part of Linda's restitution. The court sold it at auction, and the money went back into the HOA funds. I heard it ended up with a family in Flagstaff who used it for camping trips to the Grand Canyon. I hope they enjoyed it more than Linda had. On the 1-year anniversary of the incident, Marcus organized a small gathering at his house. Just a handful of neighbors who had been there that night, standing in the street watching the most ridiculous property dispute any of us had ever witnessed. We grilled burgers, drank beer, and told the story over and over, each time adding little details we had forgotten, laughing at the absurdity of it all. To Andrew, Marcus raised his beer bottle, who taught us that sometimes the solution to a problem is literally just chaining it to a tree. Everyone laughed and raised their drinks. I smiled, shaking my head at the ridiculousness of being toasted for what had basically been a moment of creative problem-solving born from pure frustration. To reasonable people doing reasonable things, I countered. And to HOAs that actually work for the community instead of the other way around. We clinked bottles and cans, and the conversation moved on to other things, normal neighborhood stuff like upcoming yard sales, and whether the city would ever fix that pothole on Maple Street. The trailer incident had become just another story in the neighborhood's history, something to laugh about at parties and tell new residents who wanted to know what Sunset Grove was really like. But I never forgot the bigger lessons. That authority without accountability becomes tyranny, no matter how small the kingdom. That sometimes standing up for yourself means getting creative and taking calculated risks. That communities work best when people actually communicate and treat each other with basic respect. And that blocking someone's driveway is never, ever a good idea, especially if you are embezzling money and cannot afford to have anyone look too closely at your actions. I kept living my normal life in Sunset Grove, going to work each day at the architecture firm downtown, where I had been employed for 5 years, coming home to my modest house with its precisely HOA-approved beige paint and properly maintained lawn. I dated occasionally, hung out with friends, traveled when I could afford it. The trailer incident became a party story, something I told on second or third dates when conversation turned to crazy neighbor stories. Most people found it hilarious. A few thought I had been reckless. One woman, a lawyer named Victoria, spent 20 minutes explaining all the legal trouble I could have gotten into if things had gone differently. We did not have a second date. The years moved forward as they do. Greg stayed on as HOA president for 2 more terms before stepping down and passing the role to Sarah Kim, who continued the practical, reasonable leadership style. The neighborhood maintained its property values, kept its streets clean, and generally functioned like a normal community instead of an authoritarian micro-state. I ran into Linda's ex-husband one last time, about 3 years after everything had happened. He was at a coffee shop in Scottsdale sitting alone with a newspaper. I almost did not recognize him. He looked healthier, less stressed, like a weight had been lifted. "Andrew," he said when he saw me, standing up to shake my hand. "How are you? How is the neighborhood?" "Good," I said. "Really good, actually." "How are you doing?" "Better," he admitted. The divorce was ugly, and the whole situation with Linda was humiliating, but I have been in therapy, working through it. I realized I had been living under her control for so long that I did not even recognize it anymore. Your driveway situation, as crazy as it was, it kind of woke me up, made me see how unreasonable she had become. We talked for a few more minutes, surface level catching up. He had a new job in commercial real estate, was dating someone, seemed genuinely content with his post-Linda life. I was happy for him. He had been a victim too, in a way, trapped in a relationship with someone who needed to dominate everything around her. "Can I ask you something?" he said as we were parting. That night with the chain, did you know it would lead to all of this? The investigation, the embezzlement discovery, everything. I thought about it. No, I said honestly. I just wanted my driveway back. I was tired of being pushed around over nothing. Sometimes you don't know where standing up for yourself will lead. You just know you have to do it. He nodded, understanding. Well, for what it is worth, thank you. You probably saved me years of misery without meaning to. We shook hands again and went our separate ways. I drove home to Sunset Grove, pulling into my driveway, my unobstructed driveway, and parked in the garage. Inside, I made dinner, watched some television, lived my quiet, ordinary life in a neighborhood that had been transformed by one night of absurd conflict. The story of Linda Morrison became part of Sunset Grove's oral history, told to new residents and remembered by old ones. It was a cautionary tale about power and accountability, a comedy of errors involving a trailer and a chain, a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of resistance can unravel entire webs of corruption. And for me, it remained proof that you should never let anyone, HOA president or otherwise, park their trailer in your driveway without a fight, even if that fight involves hardware store chains and creative interpretations of property rights. The chain still sits in my garage, coiled in the corner, a conversation piece when friends come over and ask about it. Sometimes I take it out and run my hands over the steel links, remembering that night, the weight of it on my shoulder, the satisfying click of the padlock, the look on Linda's face when she realized her power play had backfired spectacularly. It was just a chain, thick steel links purchased for yard work years ago. But for one night, it had been a symbol of resistance against petty tyranny, a physical manifestation of the simple idea that enough is enough. And sometimes, in the suburbs of Phoenix, Arizona, in a community governed by a homeowners association, that is all you need to change everything.